Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 267. We have a good one for you today. Today's fish is one of the more lesser known fish of the aquarium world, unless you are one of those that are really into aquarium fish. This would be another crown jewel of a freshwater aquarium, just like the last freshwater fish we did, that stingray. So today's fish that we're going to be talking about is the Siamese tigerfish. Now the scientific Siamese tigerfish, or scientific name Datnioides pulcher, again that's Datnioides pulcher, this is a part of the family Lobididae, which is it's a smaller group of it's a smaller family of perch-like fishes over in the Asian and oceanic. One fish that you might be familiar that this fish is part of that family is actually the triple tail. Very neat fish. Probably should do that one if we haven't already. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. But Siamese tigerfish, absolutely amazing fish. This fish is native to the Mekong and Chao Phraya river basins in Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And we've talked about fish from the Mekong before. It is an absolute unique ecosystem that is home to a lot of very rare and endemic fish. Very neat. And this fish used to be extremely abundant throughout there. Not so much anymore, but used to be extremely abundant throughout there. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Now, in terms of habitat, like most fish of the Mekong River, it's going to be a large riverine fish, flooded forest, estuarine zones. It's almost a brackish water fish, and in fact, a lot of people do consider this an actual brackish water fish, but it really thrives in those waters that are very turbid, with a lot of submerged logs, tree roots, rocky outcrops. They really like that cover, really almost dependent on that. During the flood seasons, it'll actually move up into the floodplains to go out into the inundated forests. They'll take advantage of that for prey and for reproduction. Juveniles do tend to be in shallower vegetated areas for shelter from predation, but the bigger ones, they're really using those flooded logs and rocky outcrops for their they're not as scared anymore. And a large of that has to do because this is actually a fairly large fish. I have a picture here that kind of shows you how it is when it's, full grown. This is obviously an aquarium fish, but it's good size. This is not a small fish. They can grow up to about 40 centimeters, which is around 16 inches in length. And keep in mind that most captive specimens are actually smaller. So you probably won't see one like this unless you get one from the wild. But it's got this dorsolaterally compressed body, very thick and stout though, because a lot of laterally compressed fish are actually thinner, but these are, even when it's compressed, it's actually very stout and muscular. It's got these almost golden like scales, and they're very reflective. A lot of fish scales are, when they're reflective, they're very silvery. This is reflective, but almost in like a gold and yellow, sometimes a silvery bronze coloration. But obviously, in terms of coloration, the most unique thing is these very distinct, bold jet black vertical bars, usually between 5 and 7. Sometimes they'll go a little bit more onto the dorsal. You can see it'll sometimes go onto the anal fin. They're not regular in thickness. They're actually, one of the neat things about this fish is very similar to tigers, is that the bars are irregular in a way that it makes each fish unique. So it's almost like a fingerprint. So even though the striped sternum is camouflage, just like tigers, each fish is actually unique in its coloration, the thickness of the bars, and things like that. So you can actually individually ID fish if you you know, have a good picture of it. In terms of tails, they have kind of a rounded caudal fin, a very rounded dorsal fin, rounded anal fin. They do have this very spiny first dorsal fin with the exposed spines on the first 2 rays. You know, just really robust spine, and a robust fish all around. Very large mouth, large eye. Most of them tend to have this V-shaped stripe on the front, but that's not necessarily a, you know, a unique characteristic to or it's variable. It's a variable characteristic. But other than that, you can see where it's got its name. This golden color with these tiger stripes going down the side. Very robust, large mouth, large eye. It's very good. And that coloration is really what helps them camouflage, because these are ambush predators, which is why they're sitting in those submerged logs and those rock outcrops. They're just lying still, waiting until a fish or a crustacean comes near it, and then they'll move forward extremely fast. That's why they're so stout. They're a very muscular fish. They lunge forward and they'll swallow their prey whole, and that's where the large mouth comes in, is that they can actually extend their mouth a decent ways. Now they are pretty solitary and territorial, so when you do start getting these larger ones, they're going to become much more territorial, which is why they are actually not that good of an aquarium fish. But they don't move a whole heck of a lot in the meantime, though. Now, in terms of reproduction, they're not very well studied. In fact, it's very poorly studied. However, anytime you have a riverine fish that has, especially a larger riverine fish, where the river floods up into forests, whether you're talking about the Amazon or the Mekong or any of those rainforest rivers, usually spawning happens when the annual floods come through and the floodplain forests open up, and they'll actually go out into the forest and hatch their eggs in the actual forest floor, not in the river itself. And that's because current is extremely slow, because this is new water, shallow water going over a lot of biota and biological debris. It is just an absolute feeding ground for microorganisms, so little bugs and crustaceans that are eating all those dead leaves and everything on the forest floor. That is just perfect food for fish fry. So more than likely they're going up into the floodplains, they're scattering their eggs. The young develop in relative safety of the floodplains, and then when they get a little bit larger and as the floodwaters recede, they'll start moving into the river proper, but by that time they've already grown up. So chances are this fish probably has an extremely fast growth right at the beginning of its life that kind of slows down, and as they continue to grow and just get slower and slower. Now, now that does make it to where the fish is in captivity. Successful breeding is going to be extremely rare. When you have fish like that, it's very hard to get them to breed into breeding captivity, and that's actually why this one of the reasons that this fish is in trouble. And this fish is actually in trouble. Like I said, you know, this seems like it would be a great fish to survive through anything, but it's actually it's critically endangered as listed by the IUCN. Used to have a lot of the individuals in the wild, but they've really collapsed in recent decades. Now, they were always caught for a food fish. You can imagine a fish this size would be a pretty good meal, but it's actually been a combination of the Mekong River having construction of dams, the floodplain floors being destroyed. That plays in a large part, but actually a lot of the research that I saw says that the aquarium trade actually caused this to be so problematic for this fish. And that's a sad thing to see, considering this fish is actually heavily sought after. And that's kind of the interesting fact in the video on, even though it's so endangered, it's kind of a crown jewel of predatory freshwater aquariums going for exorbitant prices. That's just really, really sad. Especially considering that it is the largest of the tiger perches, of the Datnoides, that's genera. So it's very sad that this fish, even though it's got this extremely beautiful characteristics and it should be doing fine, the aquarium trade is actually a huge reason why this fish is becoming so critically endangered in the wild. And when you combine the fact that that captive breeding is not necessarily good, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's been very difficult for them to get it fully. There is a chance, and not a small chance, that this fish could go extinct within our lifetimes strictly for the aquarium trade. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please click the link down below if you'd like to support the channel. By no means expected, but very much appreciated regardless. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and peace.